Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a superhero film, Watchmen. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. In 1985, during the interwar period, the Soviet Union has been conducting bomb tests. So America makes a doomsday clock to measure the nuclear threat to the world. Every time the threat increases, the clock up will be moved closer to midnight, depicting the chance of nuclear war. Frequent occurrence of wars in America prompts the funding of the Watchmen, a team of costumed supermen in preserving the world's peace. With the help of the Watchmen, the warring and chaotic state ends, and therefore the heroes retire. But the Soviet Union feels threatened by the heroes, especially Dr. Manhattan, who is a godlike being, and has devastating powers. So they stockpile huge amounts of nuclear weapons, to guard against America's superweapons. One night the Superman Edward Blake, the comedian, is murdered at his house. The killer is quick and strong. Edward is no match at all. He is thrown out of the window and falls to his death. The older generation of superheroes rise and fall. However, the second generation of superheroes don't enjoy their glory days very long after war. People become scared of Dr. Manhattan. In 1977, the Keene Act was passed by President Richard Nixon. The heroes have to choose either work for the government or retire. Most members choose retirement. When investigating the murder of the comedian, Rorschach theorizes that somebody wants to kill all the second generation of heroes. Suddenly some policemen come into the comedian's house. Rorschach has to incapacitate one of them to avoid exposure. With few clues, he leaves the crime scene. Meanwhile, Night Owl and Night Owl 2 gather. They are both retired, but they still meet up from time to time. They see news on the TV that Rorschach attacked the police, and has become the FBI's most wanted man. When Night Owl 2 comes home, he sees Rorschach is eating dinner. Rorschach tells Night Owl 2 his suspicions about the murder of the comedian, and warns him to be safe. Night Owl 2 doesn't believe him, and tries to persuade him to let go of the past, and have a normal life. Night Owl 2 thinks he shouldn't hide behind a mask, but Rorschach thinks Night Owl 2 is hiding in plain sight. There is no difference between them. Hearing that, Night Owl 2 loses himself in his thoughts. No matter how hard the situation is, Rorschach will not give up to evil forces. The Superman Ozymandias creates his own company after retirement. He is now a business giant in energy recycling. One day, Night Owl 2 shares Rorschach's suspicions with Ozymandias, who also thinks that Rorschach is just making a fuss. That night, Rorschach breaks into a U.S. Army research center, where he finds Dr. Manhattan and Silk Spectre 2, warning them a killer is hunting the Watchmen. However, he is ignored and teleported by Dr. Manhattan. Rorschach feels a sense of loss, being ignored so many times. The next day, the U.S. government holds a funeral for the comedian. His former comrades attend his funeral, including Rorschach. He dresses like a tramp, so nobody can recognize him. People are mourning for the comedian, and remember his past. When he was young, he was a playboy. Because of his bad temper, not many people liked him. Long ago, the comedian said that mankind had been filled with desires, and has been killing each other since the beginning of time. And it would never stop until the end of the world. Once the nuclear war breaks out, the world will become nothing but dust. When the funeral finishes, and everyone leaves, Moloch leaves a wreath. Rorschach suspects that Moloch is to blame for the death, so he attacks Moloch at his home, only to be told that the comedian visited Moloch 1 week ago. The comedian seemed upset at that moment, and said that Moloch and Dr. Manhattan's ex-girlfriend were on the same list. Hearing this, Rorschach falls into silence. He would like to know what on earth the comedian had gone through that upsets him so much. One evening, Dr. Manhattan is playing a hormone game with Silk Spectre 2. Somehow his behavior annoys Silk Spectre 2. He keeps talking about work stuff like ionic reaction, rather than hormone reaction. She can't feel his love anymore. What's more, no matter what they are doing, there is always a clone of Dr. Manhattan working. Finally, Silk Spectre 2 is upset, and wants to break up with him. Dr. Manhattan agrees and lets her go. He is too busy to be distracted. He needs to focus on how to stop the coming of nuclear war. His life is filled with all kinds of interviews and research. He also needs to calm the civilians down. Later, Silk Spectre 2 goes to complain to Night Owl 2. When they are hanging out, they are stopped by a gang of youths in the street. So they both vent their anger by teaching the youths a violent lesson. Meanwhile, Dr. Manhattan is being interviewed. At first, the reporters ask questions about the doomsday clock and the government's policy. Later, somebody asks if Dr. Manhattan would cause cancer to people close to him, because some of the people staying close do have cancer. The reporter then introduces Dr. Manhattan's ex-girlfriend onto the scene. Seeing her, all the reporters surge forward. Dr. Manhattan can't stand this anymore, so he escapes to Mars, hoping to find some peace. He stays alone on Mars and remembers the sweet past with his ex. They met in 1959. At that time, they had a similar job and lived happily. One day, finishing work, he returns to the field center to fetch his watch. When he gets his watch, he finds himself locked in. Moments later, he suffered an electric shock and vanished. People hold a funeral for him. Not long after, a miracle happens. Dr. Manhattan comes back to life with superpowers. The US government then makes him into a killing machine. Having this strong yet frightening power over life and death, Dr. Manhattan is seen as a god. However, his ex-girlfriend gradually becomes scared of him. Their relationship lasts until 1970, when Dr. Manhattan meets Silk Spectre 2, and falls in love with her. After Dr. Manhattan leaves Earth, the Soviets use it as an advantage to invade Afghanistan. Now it is only 2 minutes to midnight. Nuclear war is on the horizon again. The US government has prepared for the worst. They will attack first if necessary. They would wipe the Soviets out at the cost of the East Coast. The next day, Ozymandias survives an assassination attempt, while the killer kills himself by breaking poison in his mouth when captured. At this point, Ozymandias finally understands that Rorschach's suspicions might be correct. So he warns the others to be careful. From the investigation, Rorschach finds out that the killer is local. He also finds a familiar logo at the killer's house, which he saw at Moloch's house before. At first, Rorschach thinks Moloch may be involved. He gets to Moloch's house, only to find that he is murdered. Before he can leave, the police have arrived. Now he realizes that he has been framed. Rorschach jumps out of the window and tries to escape, but he is captured by the police. His identity is also revealed to the public. In prison, he tells his experience to a psychiatrist. He had a miserable childhood. His mother was a prostitute, and she didn't like him. So he was always bullied and abused. Growing up in this environment, he has an abhorrence of sin. Different from the comedian, Rorschach only punishes the evil. He would not take their life until he saw a 6-year-old girl murdered and fed to dogs. He chops the murderer's head with a knife. From then on, he becomes the Superman Rorschach. Now in prison, he has to face jeers and mocking every day. Somebody even tries to attack him. He is not going to endure it and pours hot oil on the attacker's face. Nobody dares to stop him. Lots of prisoners here were arrested by Rorschach before. That's why they hate him so much. They even fight each other to get the chance of revenge against Rorschach. Meanwhile, Silk Spectre 2 falls in love with Night Owl 2. Fed up with being scared, they decide to come out of retirement. They put on their uniforms and start helping people in their aircraft. They go to help Rorschach escape from the prison. When they arrive, the prison is in chaos. The police are busy dealing with the prisoners, so they get out without difficulties. Not long after that, Dr. Manhattan teleports Silk Spectre 2 to Mars. They have a debate on whether they should stop the nuclear war. Silk Spectre 2 blames him for always seeing things from God's perspective, which is unfair to the lives on Earth. Dr. Manhattan doesn't reply. Instead, he shows her something by implanting memories. Silk Spectre 2 is the comedian's daughter. Silk Spectre 2 can't accept this truth, so she bursts into tears. Dr. Manhattan can't bear to see his beloved suffer. So he decides to return to Earth to stop the war. Meanwhile, Night Owl is murdered by Rorschach's enemy, because they think he is helping Night Owl 2, though he is innocent. Rorschach finds out that the logo he saw at Moloch's place is the logo of a company named Pyramid. He goes to a local bar with Night Owl 2, hoping that they might get some information, but nobody is willing to help them. Somebody even says nasty things to them, so he teaches him a lesson. Finally, that guy tells Rorschach that it was Janie that asked him to hire a killer to kill Ozymandias. Then the TV news reports the murder of Night Owl. It happens that the murderer's accomplice is also in the bar. Night Owl 2 can't resist his anger and beats the guy up. If Rorschach didn't stop him, he could have killed him. After Rorschach and Night Owl 2 leave the bar, they slip into Ozymandias' company. They want to borrow some equipment to conduct an investigation. Then they realize something is wrong. Janie, Moloch, and the killer all work for this company. The comedian also mentioned that Moloch and Janie were on the same list. If the person who sent a killer to kill Ozymandias is the same one who is behind the comedian's murder, as long as they can find out who is in charge of the company, they will not be far away from finding the truth. From these clues, somebody wants to frame Dr. Manhattan. Night Owl 2 hacks into the company's secret data and finds out that the parent company belongs to Ozymandias, who is the one that is behind all this. Knowing the truth, Night Owl 2 and Rorschach fly to Ozymandias' base in Antarctica. Ozymandias knows that they would come for him, so he has prepared himself. Ozymandias tells them that he has spent $2 billion on tachyon research to block Dr. Manhattan's vision of the future. Ozymandias learns from Dr. Manhattan's psyche profile that he is not devoid of emotions. So he takes advantage of that and forces him to leave the Earth. The comedian is the first one who figured out Ozymandias' plan. That's why he was murdered. To avoid suspicion, Ozymandias hired a hitman to kill himself, and he poisoned the killer. After that, he revealed clues to Rorschach on purpose and led him to go to Moloch's home. Before Rorschach arrived, Ozymandias killed Moloch and called the police. Ozymandias believes that mankind is greedy. Sooner or later, human beings will be killed by their own desires. He would rather sacrifice a few people's lives for world peace than waste time on stopping the nuclear war. For years he has been trying to replicate Dr. Manhattan's power. Now he uses this power to destroy 4 major cities in the world. Millions of people are killed in an instant. Everyone thinks it is Dr. Manhattan who did this. So the US and the Soviets unite against their common enemy, Dr. Manhattan. When Dr. Manhattan and Silk Spectre 2 return to Earth, what they see is just ruins. Dr. Manhattan knows Ozymandias did this, but he doesn't choose to kill him. Surprisingly, Dr. Manhattan agrees with Ozymandias. He must remain silent, otherwise, the US and the Soviet Union will continue to fight each other, and nuclear war will be inevitable. The world can only enjoy peace when they unite together. As long as the world is safe, Dr. Manhattan is willing to be condemned. Anyway, he can't be killed by humans' weapons. He can change almost everything, except human nature. Silk Spectre 2 and Night Owl 2 choose to compromise. However, Rorschach can't accept it. He never compromises, and insists they should do the right thing. In fact, Rorschach knows he can't escape death, for he knows he will definitely reveal the truth to the public. Right then, Rorschach is vaporized by Dr. Manhattan in front of Night Owl 2. After this, Manhattan leaves them. Night Owl 2 vents his anger on Ozymandias. However, no matter how hard he punches and kicks him, Ozymandias doesn't fight back, because he knows there has to be a sacrifice if they want to preserve world peace. And he doesn't regret what he has done. In the end, the US declares its cooperation with the Soviet Union and stops the war between them, so as to fight against their real common enemy, Dr. Manhattan. A reporter later happens to find the diary left by Rorschach, which will tell people the Watchman struggles to fight for peace, and the hard choices for the Watchman to make between the absolute righteousness and its acceptable compromise to the moral world. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Peace out.